Film is a disease, Frank Capra said. When it infects your bloodstream, it takes over as the number one hormone. It plays Iago to your psyche. As with heroin, the antidote to film is more film.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to My Celluloid Heart Podcast. It's the podcast where I take two films and I put them together by one topic or theme or actor or whatever, and then I sprinkle in some facts in there to go right on top, like a nice, whipped cream on your dessert. Anywho, that's what my podcast is about, and today I have Matt Rich on from Why Daddy Drinks, and I'll get to that in a minute. I just wanted to say that today's a great day. I'm having a really good day. I had some things that happened earlier where I forgot my computer in the work car, and I drove 30 minutes home, had to drive 30 minutes back to get my computer and come back here, and now here it is later where I'd normally be in bed. A little later for me. I sleep during the day. But I'm like, hey, having a good day. Got to put the podcast out. It's podcast day. Got to put my podcast out Wednesdays. Got to do it. So that's what I'm doing, my little intro here. So today's show is a little long, me and Matt Rich. So Matt Rich is from Why Daddy Drinks podcast, and it's a podcast that he does with a friend of his, Mickey, and they pick a drink of the day, and they discuss things that came up during the week or 2 weeks while they were, something with the kids or, kicking at the back of the seat while he's on a road trip and they want to stop every time to go pee, or, he's, stops at the, it's like the movie Vacation. They stop at the Grand Canyon. Look, kids, Grand Canyon. Kids don't give a shit about a big hole in the ground. They're like, whatever, Dad. So that kind of stuff where he's like, come on, like, this is why you make me drink, because you don't like Vacation. No. But it's things like that. Like, you can't get the kids to like the movies. They're into the YouTube. They're into the Facebook. All this stuff that makes me sound old. They say, you just add the to something. I was on, the computer drinking the beer with the podcast. Anyway. So his show, it's pretty funny. It's a good little show. And then he tells you what they're drinking. And on his Instagram, he'll share what they're going to be having. So you can kind of make it yourself and then enjoy it with them. Or you could drink whatever you want. Or if you're not drink, you don't have to drink. But anyway, it's a fun show. Mickey doesn't have kids. He has kids. And I don't have kids, but I listen to the show. It's a pretty good one. So I just want to let everybody know, go check that out. Check out Why Daddy Drinks. It's a pretty good show. So on to my stuff about my show and about me. It's all about me. It's my podcast. Today's episode is our favorite Pixar. Mine is The Incredibles from 2004, and Matt's is Wall-E from 2008. And some corrections from this show, I didn't have any from the last show, are the movie that the guy I trained, the movie that he liked, that wasn't a Marvel movie, and I talked about it a couple episodes back, but if you're new to the show, you will go, what does he talk about? It was a movie called called Takers, and it had, like, I think 50 Cent was in it, and some other people, and Anakin Skywalker was in it. So it was okay. It wasn't great. I was expecting it to be better, but anyway, that was one where he was like, I like that one. Anyway, I tell the story on the podcast. Also, the woman that Matt and I was thinking about that he thought did the voice for Edna Mode, and I said, yeah, I had originally thought that as well, was named Linda Hunt. And she won an Oscar for Best Actress in a Supporting Role playing a man in The Year of Living Dangerously, if you've seen that one. Sigourney Weaver and Mel Gibson. And she's also in, NCIS Los Angeles. I think that's what it is. Yeah. It's that one with, Robin, Chris O'Donnell, and LL Cool J. Ladies love Cool James. So that's who we thought. A little girl. You'll know her. Little old lady. She was in Kindergarten Cop. Anyway, here's an interesting fan theory. This goes with the episode I did about The Thing, both things, is this is pretty cool. I really like it. And I don't know if anybody's heard this fan theory about the 1982 movie The Thing at the end. When McCready hands Childs the bottle the bottle to drink from, it is actually gasoline from the Molotov cocktails that they have been throwing. And when he drinks, McCready smiles and knows that Childs is the Thing. So the theory would be that then he would kill Childs, he would survive, or he would freeze to death, but he killed, the alien. So I like that, where I didn't notice that. That's a fan theory. I don't think Carpenter's checked in on that and said, you're right. And I don't think any smart director would. They just go, it's a good theory. It's the same thing with, I've heard the theory of Ferris Bueller, that Ferris Bueller is the Tyler Durden of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That Cameron has this imaginary friend named Ferris Bueller. Anyway, it's pretty great. And if there's anything else I missed, please let me know or send me some recommendations of some movies you want to talk about. Want me to talk about. If you want to be on the show, reach out to me. I don't care. We'll do a show. You like movies? I like movies. You can send any questions or comments to me at mycelluloidheart@gmail.com. And before I get into movies that I've watched at home or in the theater, also Talking Poop podcast. I'd been on that. Jason's been on my show. And Jason now has started a new podcast. He's done with Talking Poop. Didn't like the name. So now he changed it to Popcorn Promises Podcast. So it's on iTunes. You can look it up. You can find it. And they pick one movie. They discuss that. They got some facts in there or whatever. And then at the end, they have some little fun segments that they do. So if you like Talking Poop, you'll like Popcorn Promises. If you never listen to Talking Poop, you'll like Popcorn Promises. So anyway, if you like movies, you'll like the podcast. Anyway, now on to what I've seen in the home and in the theaters is Zombieland Double Tap from 2019. Me and the wife saw it. I said, I wish I could have seen this before I put out my zombies episode. But I said, that's great. I love it. I love it. It was good. It was like checking in with old friends. It was funny. Not as funny as the first one, but still funny. It was good. Then, as I said, the wife and I said, honey, remember you said Silver Bullet that you wanted to watch about werewolves? She goes, yeah, wolves. Anyway, Jason Bromley make fun of me for that one. So Silver Bullet, we watched it. It was really good. I barely remembered it. It was pretty cool. It was silly in parts, but I love some Corey Haim. Rest in peace, Corey Haim. And Gary Busey. He's still with us. So rest out loud. Whatever. Then I saw a movie because it was around Halloween. I had always wanted to see this. I remember seeing the commercial for it of Trick or Treat from 2007. And I had never seen this movie, and I watched it, and I really liked it. It was scary. It was weird. It was a little creepy. It was funny. It was, really neat. I just really enjoyed it. And I think I remember there was an original in the 80s with Skippy was in it from Family Ties. And I remember that one I wanted to see, and I never did. So maybe I'll see that next time. Anyway, then, so I have they have an app for AMC, for the TV channel, AMC. And because we don't have cable, but we have my friend sign in for his cable. Because he has, if you don't have basic cable or whatever, I can't sign in with my Cox email. Anyway, so sign in under that, and you can watch all these horror movies and things. And so that was on there. And then they had Predator 2 from 1990. I hadn't seen this movie since 1990. And it was fun. It wasn't as bad as I remember it. I mean, granted, it's nowhere near as cool as the first Predator. But it's still a good movie. Then my wife bought me all the Universal horror movies, the 30 of them. in a big box set, and is way cool. And so I saw Dracula from 1931, and I remembered some of this, but I didn't remember all of it. I'd seen it before, like probably a couple times, but it was really good. I really liked it. Then the wife also bought me a Nightmare on Elm Street box set of all 7, 8 movies, whatever. And so I was like, oh, awesome. So we watched A Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984. And that, of course, is fucking classic. It's good. My wife was like, I thought it would be more scary. I remember it being more scary. And I said, no, it still was. But, it's like, okay, honey, we'll wait till we get further in or whatever. She might still just go, those are cheesy. But what she does want to get into is, Halloween. And, like I said last time, we watched Friday the 13th. So that's good. I saw this thing on Netflix. You guys have probably all seen it. It's called Sound and Fury. It's like an animated thing from 2019. And it was okay. It started out really cool, but then some of it was like, it's more like music with visuals. Kind of cool, but it was okay. You could skip it, I guess. Dracula, the Spanish Dracula in 1931. Which everybody says is better than the first one, and I agree. I mean, better than the American version, and I agree. It was really good. There were shots that were different. So you have the shot of Boris Karloff. You have the shot of Bela Lugosi looking at the camera and going, "Listen to my children. What sound, what beautiful sounds they make." And on the Spanish version, the camera is like behind his shoulder, and you don't see his face. So it's weird that how they directed it different, but it's really, really neat. Because I'm glad they didn't just do an exact shot for shot, but it was a different director, and he directed it different. It was really cool. Then me and the wife went and saw Black and Blue from 2019. That's the one at the theater. It's a good movie. We have that AMC A-list Stubs member, as I say, so we can go, we pay $20 a month and you can see 3 movies a week. So we went and saw it. It was good. It was kind of, your regular stereotypical, you know how it's going to play out or whatever. It's pretty neat. And then Color Me Blood Red from 1965. It was a Herschel Gordon Lewis movie that's on Criterion Channel. And me and Joe Merle had been talking about, we couldn't wait for these to come out, and they came out on the Criterion Channel, and I had watched that. I hadn't seen any of his movies until I watched the first one, Blood Feast. And then, like I said before on the last show, that I seen 2 of these. Now I saw Color Me Blood Red. Then I watched The Gruesome Twosome from 1967, which was great. It was just cool and different, and I just love it. And then we saw, I guess this is when we saw, thought we saw Friday the 13th last time, but then we saw Friday the 13th from 1980. And that was fun because the wife did not know it was the mother. So she's like, where's Jason? Where's Jason? And I'm like, I don't know. You got to watch. And then and then at the end, I'm like, did you see that coming? And she's like, no, I didn't. And then she's like, but where's Jason? And I said, well, you got to wait. And then Jason comes out of the water at the end. It's all a dream, or is it? And so she liked that. So now, and with that, I was like, I just watched those like a couple months ago, all of them. And she's like, oh, well then let's not do it. I go, no, let's fucking do it. It was great. Let's watch them. So we watch it. Then we watched Halloween from 1978, the original, the classic, the fucking best horror movie maybe ever. It's just, it works on all the levels. So great. And she loved it. And then I saw a movie called, and I shared this on Instagram, called Sugar Hill from 1974. It was this woman's boyfriend gets killed. So she goes to some voodoo priestess and has them give her all these, these voodoo soldiers to like these undead zombie soldiers to help her fight back and get revenge. And it's pretty fun. It's fun. If you haven't seen it, see it if you like those kind of movies, because I enjoyed it. Then I woke up, or I came home, and my wife was watching Suicide Kings. So the next day I watched the whole thing, and it was really good, from 1997. I'd seen it before, but if you haven't seen it, check out Suicide Kings. It's awesome. And again, I thought sometimes I miss up these endings. Like I tell my wife, oh, the town, at the end of the town, I liked when she was on the boat going by his little cabin and he comes out to the dock and she gets on dock, and my wife's like, what are you talking about? That never happened in the town. She goes, you know, this was years ago. She goes, I've watched that movie 20 times. It never happens. I'm like, oh, well, and then I watch and I'm like, oh my God. Yeah, I guess I was totally wrong. I was imagining that's the ending I wanted. And Suicide Kings, I was like, oh yeah, it's so-and-so is the main guy. Like the guy from Roseanne. I won't spoil it, but she was like, no, you're totally wrong. And I'm like, what? But then I was like, you know, that's Elliot from E.T. And she's like, what? That's Elliot? I'm like, yeah. She goes, oh my God. Then I saw the Addams Family from 2019. This movie, it's a cartoon at the theater. It was fucking great. They hit on all the levels of what Addams Family is. They made it creepy where they didn't have to explain anything. I thought they might have to explain, like, you understand that these characters are different, so they like death and darkness, and they talk morbid, and that's their way of being happy. So they like dead flowers instead of live flowers, all this stuff. And they did it fucking great, and it was funny, and it was good, and oh, so good. So everybody check that one out. Then I saw The Omen from 1976, and this movie I thought I had seen, and I'm watching, and I'm enthralled in this thing. I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? And it's got fucking David something with a W. Anyway, it's got the bad guy from Time Bandits and Tron in it, but he's playing a good guy. He's like a reporter, a photographer. And I'm like, oh my God, that's that guy. And I love him. And then it's got Gregory Peck in it, and it was just really cool, really good little thing. I want to watch the others, but I'm also know that as they go, they're going to get worse and worse. Then this is a movie I'd been waiting for like a month or more. It was called Mad Love from 1935. It's playing on Turner Classic Movies for Halloween, like around the 27th, 28th, something like that. And it has Peter Lorre in it, and Peter Lorre is obsessed with this woman who is an actress who performs. But she's in love with a pianist, and this is like her last night of performing, and she's going to go off and be with her husband, who's a pianist. And this guy, Peter Lorre, who is obsessed with her, is really distraught that she's going to be... that's her last show. And she thinks he's a little creepy. Her husband gets in a car wreck and damages his hands and will not be able to play the piano. And this guy, Peter Lorre, is a surgeon and can do wonderful things, does some tests, does different things. So she says, can you help? So he decides, oh, wait, maybe I can do a hand transplant. And it just so happens a murderer has just been executed. And so he takes that body, cuts off the hands, gives them to the pianist. So not only do you have that stuff going on, almost like that Oliver Stone movie, the first movie he wrote was called The Hand, and it was about this killer hand that tried to kill people. It was attached to a guy, but it tried to kill people. And that's what this is. It's just like that Body Parts movie is the same way. Is really good. I don't want to go any further into it, but if you like old movies, 1935, this one is one that I may buy because it was so different and cool for 1935. I really liked it, and I love Peter Lorre. Then we saw Ghostbusters from 1984. Of course, the wife was like, let's watch it. And I'm like, honey, watch. Look at this. Watch. He's going to, he just shocked that guy. Isn't that funny? And look, his gum fell out of his mouth. And my wife's like, I've seen this movie before. I go, I know, but I thought maybe it's been a while and you didn't know that. And she's like, no, I know. I'm fine. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry that I'm like, look, watch this part. Then I saw The Incredibles 2004 because I want to do this movie. And The Incredibles is fucking great. The best Pixar movie ever. Toy Story is good. Toy Story 3 made me cry. Me and Matt talk about it. Made two grown men cry. 3 if you count Joe Merle. And it's just great. The Incredibles is just everything works in a real world setting. Like I love it. Terminator Dark Fate I saw from 2019. This movie, I was talking to a guy last night about it. He saw an early screening where it didn't have the effects weren't done yet, and I was like, that must have been hard to figure out, like how to watch the movie without the effects, and just imagine like, okay, they're going to put something in here. But he said he went and saw it later when they redid it. But anyway, when they put it out complete, this movie is one where I own the first one and I own the second one, and now I can own this one, and I'm good. I can end it right there. I don't have to buy all these other shit that change the timeline. This changes the timeline a bit, but it makes sense. And the other ones make sense, but you know what I mean. This is it's a direct sequel to number 2. Works out perfect. I love it. So everybody go check it out. I know it's not doing that well, but it's really good. Has a lot of great action scenes, action things in it. Oh, so good. Then I saw Wall-E from 2008. I hadn't seen this for a while. I remember when I first saw it, I think I either rented it or something, and I saw it, and I was like, I really like that. I got to buy it. And I went and bought it, and I watched it again. And I think that was the only 2 times that I watched it. And because, like I said, I don't have kids, so I don't have to watch it over and over again. And then all of a sudden, when I watched it this time, I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that part. That part's funny. I like the little cleaning robot, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we get into all that on the show. Then, to finish out the Herschel Gordon Lewis movies, I saw Wizard of Gore from 1970 and on Criterion Channel. And it was a hypnotist that would hypnotize these women, and then he would do these magic things on them, like cutting them in half, but without a box around them, so you could see him cut them in half. You would see all this gore. Then all of a sudden, you'd blink, and everything was back to normal, and he'd get the girl, stand her up, and put her back in the audience. The next day, she'd be dead. Of the same kind of infliction, like her guts were out. She was found in 2 pieces. And so it's like, what the fuck? So it's really fun in that way. So those Herschel Gordon Lewis, they're a special movie. And it was the 60s and 70s, and, it was all about, here's a vomit bag, don't throw up, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, that's everything that I've been watching. I'm sorry that I went on for 22 minutes. I hope you enjoyed hearing what I'm talking about, what I'm watching, what I'm doing, all that great stuff. Like I said, it's a great day, everybody. I'm sorry that this is such a long episode, but hey, come on back and maybe it'll be shorter next time. Hey, that's what she said. Ha! Anyway, now without further ado, let's get to the show.
Dogs are just as bad as kids.
Well, my wife goes, this is why we don't have kids, because you get angry when they lick you in the face and they jump on you while you're sleeping. And I said, no, if they're kids, I'm not going to be as upset because they're children. So,
well, but if they're kids and they start licking you in the face, you should get upset.
I should call somebody and say, go check on these kids.
If they just jump on you, that's okay. They do that. But if they start licking your face, you might want to get them checked out by a doctor.
That's right. I remember being that's a good segue. We're in the show now. Here you go. Hello and welcome. I remember laying with my dad, like he has these big hands, of course, as a kid too. Mm-hmm. And I remember I would be cold, even though I live in Arizona, and I'd lay on his hand, like with my face on his hand, just because it was like, that's my dad. And also I think I was trying to get more time to stay home so I don't have to go to school. So I'd just be like, and then it'd be like, you got to go to school. Oh, shit. Okay. I wouldn't say shit in front of my parents. They'd get in trouble.
You'd think it, though.
One time, I'm here with Matt Rich from, or just Matt, whatever you want to call him. I can cut out that part. Anyway, from Why Daddy Drinks podcast. And we started talking about dogs and kids, and that's what got us on to here, which is a good segue for his show. And I guess mine. I had a thing where I've only been spanked by my parents twice when I was little. My life's not over yet. My dad may spank me tomorrow. I don't know. And one time was for I had went across the street and I didn't, and we only lived on like a small block and like, not even a big, it was like a 2-lane street, one going one way, one going the other.
Mm-hmm.
And I went across the street and we were trying to look over into this trailer park that was next to like where our houses were. And I remember, I guess I didn't hear my parents going, "Hey, hello, Phillip, come to dinner." And it was 6 p.m. or something. And my dad or mom comes to the corner and they're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh, I was over here. I'm just doing that." "Get over here. You're not supposed to cross the street." And so then I went in and I remember I got a spanking and I'm just like crying because I was, not to brag about myself, I was a pretty good kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was more upset that I let them down.
Yeah.
But on the other end of that, I was upset that I didn't do any, I just crossed a little street. It's nothing, I was maybe, and I was probably 10, I don't know. But when you look back, like when I see kids in high school now, I go, "Oh my God, these kids are so young." But when you were in high school, you feel like, "Oh yeah, I was almost an adult." And you're like, "No, I wasn't."
No. Well,
and then the other time I got spanked was, I think I had flunked. Well, I mean, I know I flunked 7th grade, but because I'm supposed to be class of 89, but I'm class of 90. But I flunked 7th grade, and I think my mom didn't know how to punish me. So she's like, and this is 7th grade. Like I'm, however old you are in 7th. So she spanked me. And I remember I had my pants on and, so it was like, I was more like crying, but not really because it didn't hurt. So I think it was like fake crying and it's just weird.
Well, yeah, when you're a kid, you got to react to it or they'll give you more of it,
Mm-hmm.
So you got to act like it hurt. But at the
yeah.
same time, you're like, "Mom, really, what's the point in this?
Yeah,
Come on now."
Come on, I'm too old now. Just give me a stern. I remember she goes, "You don't want to grow up and like pick cotton and pick onions with the Mexicans, across the street." And I was like, "Okay, Mom." She's like, "You don't want to be like them, do you?" I'm like, "Is my mom racist?"
Yeah, it was a different time.
Yeah.
She's set in her ways. She's
Well,
not racist.
And on your last show, Why Daddy Drinks podcast, on your last show, you guys were talking about like you'd go out and play or whatever, and that brought me to that about it being a different time. My dad would go, "What do you stay inside for? Don't be a homo. Like go out, don't be gay. Just go out and play, And I'm like, "Dad, I like watching movies or just playing along to the TV about whatever,
Oh yeah, there's a million things that our parents used to say when we were kids.
Yeah,
that nowadays you'd be appalled.
Yeah,
I remember my old man when you were screwing around at the dinner table and not eating your food or whatever, he would look you in the eye and say, "Eat your food like a white man." I'm like, and now, at the time.
Well, also, yeah, it's like, okay, but it's also, if you dive into that, like, what does that mean? Does that mean, like, all other races are animals? Does it mean with my utensils?
Yeah, they do something different. No, and it's at the time, because I grew up in a really small town in Wyoming, when I was really little. And there literally were no other people but white people in town.
Yeah.
So that's even more complexing because you're like, well, I guess I've never seen anybody else eat dinner. So they do it different. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the things that our parents did that you just couldn't get away. And I listen to Adam Carolla's podcast all the time, and that's what he says. Well, no, they're not racist. They're just set in their ways.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny, but it's also funny because these old friends of mine, they're not my friends anymore, but when they had kids, we would talk with the grandma about the things that come out of your mouth as a kid, yelling to your kids, that you would never say, that would make a funny opening for a podcast. That sometimes I would do like weird shit, like what are you putting the corn cob up your ass for? Like that's something that you got to tell your kid, don't do that, Or like you said, don't lick my face. What are you waking me up for? Well, I saw the dog do it. Don't do that. You don't do that to people.
Well, once again, if your kid's licking your face or putting a corn cob in his butt.
Yeah. Maybe I went to the extreme, although maybe I knew some weird kids. I'm like, what's wrong with the corn cob? Do it like a white man. Yeah.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. But, and I don't know how many. I'm sure none of your listeners have probably ever even listened to my podcast, but
I don't know. I mean, Joe and Jason and maybe some others that I told about. But I was going to introduce it, but go because I heard a good interviewer should tell about you instead of you telling about it, because then But anyway, but go ahead.
I'm not necessarily going to talk about it. I'm just
right
on my podcast. We do the drink of the day because I'm an alcoholic and I like to drink.
Yeah.
And I do have to bring up a little bit of a story. And today is a special day.
Oh, good.
It's today. A law went into effect in Utah that now we can get regular booze, regular beer.
So not 3-2.
It's not 3-2 anymore.
Yeah.
But the people in Utah, the legislatures decided that 5% was so much better.
Yeah.
It's kind of bullshit, but
yeah.
Because I go down there, my mom lives in Arizona too, and I go down there and the alcohol aisle in Walmart to me is amazing.
Yeah.
We don't have that in Utah, you know. We can buy beer in the gas station and that is it. So today is the first day that I can get normal, regular beer at my gas station.
Cool.
And I'm loving it.
Yeah. And what are you drinking?
I am drinking, it's made by Founders. It's called All Day IPA.
Oh, yeah. You like that IPA. That's heavy.
Oh, yeah. I love me a good, this is supposed to be a Sessions IPA. So it's not quite as hoppy as a lot of IPAs can get, but it's still an IPA. So it's really hoppy.
Yeah.
But it's brewed in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is Joe and
yeah. Joe and Phil. Yeah. Sometimes Phil. Yeah. The other Phil. Yeah.
I think we need to start calling him something.
Well, it's like I told Jason, call him always Phil or something. But that was where, Jason asked me, like, are you upset? Jason on Popcorn Promises, formerly Talking Poop, said, are you upset about that they call you sometimes Phil? And I said, well, first it was like Phil wrote us a thing or Phil said this, and Phil would say, you mean landfill or, the no Phil, whatever. And then it turned into now it's sometimes Phil. And so it's like, okay, I'm good with that.
I don't know. I think as soon as you get a nickname, you've made it. So,
but I think with the other Phil, I don't think he listens to as many podcasts. And so he wouldn't know if we did change his name other than Joe telling him like, oh yeah, they called you always Phil.
Yep. Okay. Well, there it is. That it's always Phil.
There we go.
Joe and always Phil. So
and then it's weird with me and my friend since second grade. His name's Joe, so it's Phil and Joe. So whenever I say Joe, I have to say Joe Merle, and my wife goes, "Oh, okay," because she'll think I'm talking about my buddy who lives across town. Go ahead. I interrupted you again.
Mine
Go ahead.
That brought me back some absinthe from Argentina.
I saw that. Yeah.
So I'm sipping a little bit of it too.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
Is it good? I was going to say, is it, well, remember when we used to get Everclear when we were like when you were young and it was like 2-liter bottle of like purple Everclear or whatever. It's like, it's just like the Boone's Farm. Like you used to get the Boone's Farm stuff.
Yeah. It's horrible.
But, so when we were going to record today, I said, hey, should we do beer? You said, I have an idea for something, and you were going to do a space thing. No, you were going to do a Pixar drink. No, you were doing a Long Island iced tea. And I was like, oh, that's good. But part of me was thinking, oh, now I got to go buy the stuff.
That's why I decided against it.
Right. And then I said, you know what? I got here in Arizona, it's called Papago Brewing Company makes it, and it's called Orange Blossom Beer, and it's really good. It's one of my favorites. And so I said, oh, yeah, you said, let's just change it to beer, and you'll have your beer, I'll have mine. I said, okay. And then last night I'm watching The Incredibles, and I guess I drank 2 beers, and I thought I only drank one, and I had one in the fridge. So I told him before we started, I go, let me go get a beer. And I come back with coffee, and I'm like, yeah, I'm all out of beer. So,
well, my wife would be probably the happiest woman in the neighborhood if I accidentally drank 2 beers.
Yeah.
Because I drink a couple more than couple,
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's well, and here's the thing. There's and forgive me because I said this to my friend once and she actually was an alcoholic and I felt really bad. But I said, she goes, every time I come home, though, I drink. And I go, there's nothing wrong with, and she's in the Navy and she was living in Virginia at the time. And I said, but there's nothing wrong with that. Like, that's okay. You can have a drink. And then she would be like, yeah, but I drink to get fucked up. And now what do I say? I don't want to go, yeah, maybe you do have a problem, because she's a little drunk at the time of telling me. So I'm like, oh, well, okay, yeah, that's a little. I said, I have some beers. I have maybe 3 a night, if it's, if it's my weekend or whatever. And it's one of those where now I'm going to tell you, like, no, you're fine. And then you're going to be like, but I drink a 12-pack a night. And I'm going to go, oh, okay, wait, let me put your wife on. Let me talk to your wife.
Yeah. No, I fully agree and 100% think that I know I'm an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
I know I have that gene in me, so I have to keep it under control.
Yeah.
And that's why I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, well, I know I'm an alcoholic, so it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
well, it's I think it's better though. Like my friend Sean, who is sometimes on the podcast, and we did the Keanu Reeves episode, and he's a recovering alcoholic, but his got, when you're at work and you have a bottle of hooch in your drawer or your desk, and you're doing that, or you're popping pills also while you're at work to keep that high, and then he got in a wreck on his way home one day, rear-ended some lady, and that was kind of his realization for a second of, okay, and he got in trouble and had to go to court, and then he ended up going to Florida for a rehab thing, came back from Florida, and what you don't realize, like, you probably go to the same store all the time. He would go to the store by his house, and he'd walk in there to get something else at Circle K, and the guy would put up 2 bottles of, here's some whiskey, and and he'd go, no, I'm recovering now. And the guy go, oh, okay. And I said, that was so tempting for you to go, all right, I'll go ahead. And sure enough, he slipped and, had like a year sobriety, and then slipped, and now he's been, however long, 4 or 5 years sober. So
yeah, well, good for him. That's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the thing, where if it's a detriment to everybody in your life, then you have a problem. But you sound like you don't.
I tell my wife all the time, I'm like, I'm an alcoholic without consequences.
Yeah, there you go. That's the best.
Until I start getting the consequences, I'm just going to run the course.
Yeah. That's a one to be. Be that guy.
And she immediately rolls her eyes at me and tells me I'm a dumbass. That's okay.
And then I'm sure everybody knows, because it was on the topic when you clicked on this podcast, now I forget what I called it, but anyway, it's our favorite Pixars. So I asked Matt, I said, do you want to be on the show? He said, sure. I said, what do you want to do? He said, how about, I said, whatever you want. He said, do you like Pixar movies? I said, yeah. And then you said, how about your favorites? So then I was like, oh, not Pixar. Now we're doing, my favorite is Raiders, and I'll piss off Jason if I do Raiders of the Lost Ark. And you were like, no, your favorite Pixar. And I'm like, oh, okay, The Incredibles. And you were like, I like Wall-E. And I'm like, you're wrong, but okay. No. I was like, okay. And which is weird for that I started thinking, I'm like, for the movie show, I mean, it can be cartoons as well. Like me and Joe Merle talked about Mask of the Phantasm. The Batman Mask of Phantasm was amazing, and me and Jason talked about it. So there can be great animated movies. And to get into my personal story about, did you tell your personal beer story? Was there a personal beer story, or was it just that you got the beer, that they changed the law? There was no tale to that beer. Okay.
No personal.
I thought maybe you
story.
had like, one time I woke up naked, the corn cob up my ass.
Oh shit!
My dad told me, be a white man, put that in your ass like a white man.
Yeah. Yeah. And then somebody licked my face.
That's right. And then you woke up and you're like, oh, it's a dream. Okay. No, so a long time ago, my wife makes fun of me for this. I went and saw Toy Story 3 in the theater, and and I went by myself, and I'm like, okay, and I'm watching it, and at the end, they're all going to be incinerated.
Oh,
and,
God.
And Buzz is like, doesn't give a shit about Jesse or the horse or none of that through the whole thing. Gets to the end, and either Jesse, I forget if it's Jesse and the horse and him, but they all hold hands, and all of them are holding hands, or they're going to die. And I'm crying. I got tears rolling down my cheek just watching this, and I got choked up, and I'm in the theater. And then, the little aliens come and save them, the little things from the machine.
claw.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, my God, okay. And I'm like, yay. And so I'm telling that to my wife, and my wife goes, it's Toy Story. Like, it's a Disney property. They're not going to kill Tom Hanks, Tim.
No.
And I said, no. I said, the thing was, I'm so invested in it. And this is where also I talk about my wife not understanding me doing a movie show or people listening to a movie show more. And what she doesn't get, like she'll multitask. So she'll be on her phone like this, watching a movie. And I'm like, honey, are you, like we watched Ghostbusters the other day. I'm like, honey, watch. She's like, I've seen it before. I said, I know, but I figured maybe it's been a while. Like this part's coming up is funny when, he's like, that's a big ass Twinkie. But she's kind of like in the middle of doing bills or doing whatever, which I love. It gets our bills paid. But when she's not, I'm getting choked up by some little moment in like The Ranch is one of my favorite shows. It's on Netflix.
I love that. Yeah.
And so I'll get choked up with Sam Elliott saying something or just their father and son thing or whatever. And I'm like, oh my God, that was so good. And my wife, and I'll be choked up or tear rolling down my cheek, and she'll just go, oh yeah, that was good. Like she gets that it was emotional, but it doesn't hit her as hard. And I'm like, and that's where she's like, you were going to cry at a cartoon. Like you're such a pussy. And I'm like, honey, it was very sad. There was a story that goes kind of with that I remember. I'm watching, remember City of Angels with Nicolas Cage, where he was an angel and had Meg Ryan. And so I go to the theater to watch this for the first time. And I'm watching, I know Jason would say, this has nothing to do with Pixar. So
he can kiss your ass.
Exactly. Kiss my ass, Jason. And so I'm sitting behind a guy and his wife or girlfriend, and they're watching City of Angels, and I'm watching City of Angels. And it comes to that end part where, spoiler alert, Lake Tahoe, she's on the street, she's dying, and, he's there, or maybe he didn't get there. Anyway, whatever it was. She dies, and it's very sad. And I'm crying. I'm like tears, and I got the really lump in my throat, hard lump in my throat. And at the end of the movie, then I sit for a little bit and listen to the music, and then I get up to go to the restroom, and that guy that was in front of me happens to go to the restroom. And we're both, and it could have been something else for him, but we're both wiping tears out of our eyes, but not acknowledging each other. But I noticed that he was doing something with his eyes, and I was doing that, and I was like, oh my God, that, but he told her, no, I'm fine, and then went to the restroom, and I was like, oh.
See, and it's funny that you bring up Toy Story 3 because that was the first one that got me too. That moment when they're all sliding down into the incinerator and they're about to go, and they've been talking the whole movie that if we get stuck in the attic it'll be fine because we'll be together. Then we're going together, and it's just like and I'm sitting there on the couch and I'm a babbling idiot, and I've got 3 kids and a wife that are all watching the same movie I'm watching. And I can see my youngest, she's like 6 at the time. She keeps looking at me and just giving me that, what the hell is wrong with you, old man? And and even at the end of that movie when the kid Andy, he's giving the toys to
the little girl. Oh my God, then you're crying again.
My shit again.
Yeah.
And I don't care what anybody says. If right now I think Pixar are the best storytellers in Hollywood. Yeah, they tell they're the writing is amazing. The how they craft a story is they're the best storytellers. And yes, it is a animated movie, but there's plenty of stuff in all of them that I've seen lately. All the way back to the original Toy Story that is perfectly entertaining to us adults. And can keep a kid's attention. Can keep
can play on both of it and to get you, just like Iron Giant was that way, where the adults were getting all the jokes and then that was hitting you deep and you were like, oh my gosh. And that's like some that, we're going to talk about here in a minute, but The Incredibles was like, there's stuff in there that just makes you like, there's like hero moments and just like, you're just like, oh my gosh. But yeah, I guess before we get to that though, I had asked like, do you have any favorite movies? Like you're not, like you said, you're into movies. Like I like that movie. It's kind of like I said on my last show. Like you like the movies, but you don't really. I don't know about the guy's perform. I don't know who the guy was, but I like that movie. Or
I have no idea who directed it.
Yeah.
Unless it's Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt or Jennifer Aniston, I have no idea who the people's names are.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got. I mean, you always got to go back to the Goonies.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because when I was a kid, it was the coolest thing I had ever seen.
Yeah.
And I'll get into it later when we talk about some of the different movies, but my kids are spoiled as shit.
Yeah.
They see the Goonies and they're like, when they're going through the cave and they're getting washed down to where the pirate ship's at and stuff.
Yeah.
That to me was just, it was terrifying. And it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. And my daughter's like, Dad, they're just on a water slide, right? I'm like, you shut your damn mouth.
Yeah.
This is cinematic gold and you're tearing it apart. But
well, and speaking of that, because that's what else I wanted to get to was the other day you were, not to jump on Rambo right away, but you were talking about you were watching Rambo with your son.
Yeah,
and
that was thanks to you. You were talking about it.
And it's like with the wife, well, thank you. With the wife, I said, honey, I'm going to watch First Blood. Do you want to watch it? I said, I bought all 4 movies. They were $17 on digital or whatever. And so she's like, yeah, let's do that. So we start to watch First Blood, and she's like, I thought Rambo was like in the forest. Like I thought he was a military guy, like, and she was thinking of number 2. Everybody, I think all people that think about Rambo think about number 2. And I'm like, no, it started here. And so she watched it. She was like, okay. I go, now we're going to watch number 2. And she kind of was into it a little bit and then just, checked out. Like she was like, he's sad over that girl. Like she just blew up. Like that barely happened and he's sad. And I'm like, no, I get it. But it's a thing of trying to, especially the older movies, like the hero moments, like Goonies, when he sticks a knife into the sail and he's like, hey, you guys, and he's sliding down, and you're like, fucking badass. He's, hero. And, Popeye, like, dancing on the water on that. I don't know if you ever saw the Popeye movie with Robin Williams.
Yeah, I did.
He's like walking across the water and like, oh, it's so cool. But all those, or like, I mentioned on Jason's show or whatever it was, on Return of the Jedi, Luke is standing there. He's going to jump in the Sarlacc pit. R2's waiting. Luke jumps, bounces off the little skydiving board, the diving board, flips around. R2 shoots him his lightsaber. He lands and like kills like 3 people. And then he grabs Leia and he kicks a gun and the gun goes and then they shoot the whole barge. And it's just one of those moments that you're like, yeah. And anybody else watches that and they're going to go, yeah. Let's get with the story. It's like, not that I have those, but with my wife, I'll be like, honey, do you want to, like I've told the story, Running Scared with Gregory Hines, and it was from 1986. Gregory Hines and Billy Crystal, and I say, you want to watch this? She goes, okay. She bought it for me for Christmas. We watch it. She's like, falls asleep. I'm like, honey, watch this. Is funny. And this part, and I'm saying the lines to her, and then she falls asleep. So I go ahead and finish watching it. The next day, I go, honey, you want to watch Running Scared? She's like, you just watched it last night. I go, yeah, but you fell asleep. I'll watch it again if you want to. She's like, okay. So then we watch it, and she falls asleep again. And I'm like, okay, there's no, like, she can't give me her love of the Burbs, and I can't give her my love of Running Scared. She just won't get it. And it's just like you, maybe with the kids going, look, this is Rambo, and him going, I've seen John Wick. I don't need Rambo, know.
Well, my son thought Rambo was badass.
Oh, that's cool.
He loved it. Mm-hmm. And he loved First Blood. Mm-hmm. We watched the second one. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, Rambo First Blood
Rambo
Part 2.
2.
Yeah, they name them all weird. Like Rambo First Blood Part 2, and then there's Rambo 3 instead of First Blood.
And we watched Rambo 3, and he's loving them. He's thinking it's, and see, and I never realized I'd seen First Blood, but when I was a kid, I mean, I had the toy gun, I had the and it came with the little like Buddha necklace thing, and I had that, and I think I went as Halloween as Rambo one year, but it was fun, because you had talked about it, and then you suggested what's the podcast with the two Australian chicks? I was going to bring that up too. The Ladies Guide to Dude Cinema. Yes, I listened to the episode where they talked about First Blood. Yeah, and they were kind of touched. They didn't realize that it wasn't just a blow 'em up movie. It was actually a good story.
Yeah, it wasn't Rambo 2, it was First Blood, and they were like, "Oh my god, the guy just wanted a sandwich." Like, come on. Yeah.
So, and I did the same thing. I went on my Apple TV the other day, and it had the bundle on there, and it was like $10.
Yeah.
I was just like, I looked at my wife and I was like, that's $2.50 a movie.
Yeah.
I am not passing this up. I don't care. We're buying it.
Yeah, exactly.
But so, I mean, all of the big action movies when I was a little kid, like, Rambo and I remember I can barely, what is it? Was it Commando with
Arnold holding the tree? And you had that like rocket launcher that had like 4 something on it. Yeah.
It was just like trying to save his daughter.
Yeah.
Or whatever. I literally have not seen that movie since I was a little
I
kid.
haven't seen that for a long time. I've been wanting to buy it. I told Jason Bromley that I need to see it again.
Yeah, I need to find it, but that's
that's one where what I want to get. But we'll talk about your favorites because that's why I brought it up, and then I ramble. You'll notice I do that.
You're good.
Is you say that now, but then people go 2 hours, dude. I had to cut it into two days of listening because you just fucking rambled. It's a thing of like trying to get the kids to like that the same that you did, and it's the same with my wife of like, honey, like this is cool because of this. And I realized because of that Ladies Guide to Dude Cinema, and it's like Joe Merle and Joe and Phil say on those movie guys, it's like you can't diss somebody for liking something that you don't like because it's all movie love and they love it the same way that you love whatever. But it's the same thing with you can't go, kids, you got to watch this. This is fucking awesome. And they're going to go, Dad, this is black and white, or this is, too slow, or, whatever. And it's the thing where you just where I've kind of realized, like when, I was with a guy, I think I told on my show, but there's a guy I was training. He's 20 years old, 21. I'm driving around with him and I'm like, hey, I do a movie podcast. I go, what are some of your favorite movies? And he's like, I love all the Marvel movies. And I go, okay. So what else have you, excuse me. He goes, oh, I saw that one. I forget the name of it. It starts with a T, but it had all these people in it. But anyway, and I was like, well, what about I said, what about like Fight Club? Have you seen Fight Club? He's like, no. He said, I've heard of it. Like, don't talk about Fight Club. I'm like, okay. And then I go, have you seen the movie Heat from 1995? He goes, oh, that's an old movie. So I show him both the trailers while we're sitting in the car. I'm showing him the trailers, and he's like, and for Heat, he goes, that looks really good. I go, it is really good. I go, I want to pull the car over, drop you off here. I'll finish the patrol, and you just watch a movie. And I'm like, but you should watch it. But he grew up for his 10 years of life since he was 11 was all the Marvel stuff. And that's all he waited to come out. And so it's like, okay, I get it. Like, and there's things where people just go, oh, that's old. That's from the 90s,
Well, but at the same time, aren't you just a little bit jealous?
Yeah.
Because, like, with me, the Goonies, it's up there. It was like the most amazing film ever made because it came out when I was 10 and I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Yeah. And now looking back on it, it's just like, oh wow, that was super corny. Yeah. And the effects on it weren't very good, but I still just love it. And these kids nowadays, the stuff they're introduced to when they're 10 is Iron Man. Oh my God, that was an amazing movie.
Yeah. It's and that's where I did that 23andMe thing, and it says that I may be susceptible to Alzheimer's. So part of me goes, well, maybe that's a good thing because then I can watch movies that I've already seen, and I could go, man, that Rambo thing, that's pretty cool. But of course, no, I don't want Alzheimer's. But my aunt was that way. My aunt didn't have Alzheimer's, but she would forget. She saw so many movies. She was like, I don't know if I've seen it. So when she watched it again, it was like for the first time, and she would love it. And And that's like you were on, Jason's old show talking about Pulp Fiction, and you had never seen it. And it was like, oh, I wish I could go back and never see that, and see it for the first time. Like, oh, so cool.
Yeah, it was. It was great. But yeah, see, and that's the funny part is you asked me what my favorite movie is, and it's I've got the couple that I can bring up, but then you go to talking about movies, and I'm like, oh yeah, I did that was a great movie.
Yeah.
And that's why I love listening to you and those movie guys and all that kind of stuff, because it brings up stuff that I've watched that before.
Yeah.
But I really need in my adult brain,
I need to revisit. Yeah.
I wasn't a dumb high school kid that didn't completely understand all of it. So, that's why I love listening to them, is because, I'm not a huge movie fan.
Yeah.
Well, I am, but I don't have all the facts in my brain, but
yeah.
It does. I go back and I watch some of these movies, and I pick up a lot of things that I didn't pick up when I watched it when I was 13 or, whatever. So it's just really fun. You know?
Well, it's like recently, no, exactly. And that's where also it's almost a loaded question, like, what's your favorite? But I remember I had Brant on, and I was like, and I didn't tell him, like, tell me your favorite, but to introduce him, I was like, what's one of your favorite movies? Did you freeze up? No, you didn't. I saw your head move for a second. I was like, did he see buffering, motherfucker? So he's in Utah. I'm in Phoenix. Yeah, exactly. Just like my cousin does. And so I had said, like, well, who are some of your favorite directors? And and then he drew a blank because he was like, I have a bunch, but I couldn't think of any. And it was a big, long pause of just nothing. And then later he was like, you're going to edit that, right? Like, where it doesn't seem like, and I said, yeah, I'll edit that out. And he's like, next time. So then the next time when he was on, he was like, okay, here's some of my favorites. So I was like, okay.
Well, don't ask me that question, because I don't have the favorite directors, because I don't know who directs anything. So.
Yeah. No, that's perfectly fine. But no, and that's where, it's like my favorite. Like, I saw a movie the other day I was telling Joe Merle about called Mad Love. And I've been waiting for it on Turner Classic Movies, and it had Peter Lorre in it. And it was like 1934, and it was really like dark and twisted, and so awesome. But that was one where I know that, like, me and Joe Merle, I know I bring him up all the time. Now it's a drinking show, so you have a drink every time I say Joe Merle. Him and I have talked about, we know that nobody else may like the movies except for me and him and maybe Josh. And so we're like, I'm writing him, hey, this is a great movie. I just watched it. But it's like The Omen the other day. I thought that I had seen The Omen before, the original from 76. And I watched it, and I was like, holy shit, like, that's a pretty cool little movie. Like, I liked it. Yeah. So, but what I'm trying to do is watch more movies that I haven't seen, but also revisit some. But usually my wife will be like, like the other day, she's like it was Halloween. And so she's like, let's go home and watch Ghostbusters. So I'm like, okay, so we did that. But yeah, now, and I just bought all the Nightmare on Elm Streets, which I saw when I was younger. And now I want to dive back into those, because I remember number 4 was really cool. I don't know if you're big into Nightmare on Elm Street, but number 4, there's a section in there where they wake up, they get in the car, they go to drive, like this whole thing, and then all of a sudden they're back in the truck and they're driving again, and you're like, what the fuck? And the same thing happened. And you're like, is there a problem with the video, with the film? And all of a sudden it goes back to them driving again. And you're like, and it's Freddy fucking putting them back in the same exact thing. And you're just like, fucking awesome. Yeah. So that's one movie that me and the kids and my wife had never seen Groundhog's Day. Yeah.
And I'm wow. Like, I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, how did you not see that movie? This is a masterpiece,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Bill Murray's like the greatest in that movie. And I couldn't believe that she hadn't seen it. And it's just like a lot of the movies that you bring up with your wife.
Yeah.
Me with my kids and stuff. But that was the first one with my wife that I was just like,
yeah, you were like, really? we gotta watch this.
We're finding it on a streaming service, or we are buying it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's done.
I'm wearing my my Bill Murray shirt.
Oh,
see, it's got all
I love Bill Murray.
It's his face, and then it's got all the little pictures in it. And me and a guy, I went to Comic-Con, and me and this guy stood there, and he was like, what's that one from? Where he's got a bowling ball, and we're trying to figure it out. And then he goes, oh, it was Kingpin. And we're like, oh, yeah. But it was me and this stranger having a conversation about Bill Murray, like,
Well, and like, because we were talking the other day, you did your Zombieland.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason he ended up in that movie is because Woody Harrelson had a connection with him from Kingpin and, was able to give him a call. But
yeah, exactly. No, and that was what's interesting on Zombieland 2, because I was listening to him on a podcast, Woody Harrelson, and he tells a story about how did you start acting, and he's like, well, I used to go, we were in the library once, and my friend told me to sing Elvis because he said I would imitate Elvis. And he said, so I'm singing to Elvis, but I'm like, but we're in the library, I can't. And he's singing real low. And then he goes, then people start gathering around, and he's really getting into it. And he's singing Blue Suede Shoes or whatever he's singing, and he keeps going. And all of a sudden, by the end, he's up on the desk, and he's dancing, on one of the tables. And he's like, and then one of the drama kids came over and was like, you need to be on our thing. And he's like, okay, because he was like, she's cute, I like her, and she's talking to me. Oh, awesome. But he put that story into Zombieland 2 where he tells that story, and I was like, and it's again where it's useless knowledge, where I go, honey, that really happened to him. And she's like, no, I don't care,
let me watch the movie.
So but okay, let's get to
you told me earlier that you don't do a whole lot of editing. You're gonna learn that I'm just as bad as going on tangents as you are.
Okay.
So this might be your longest episode ever.
Well, that's good. That's good. I always enjoy it. So we're on to The Incredibles from 2004, and the plot is, I moved my stuff over. A family of undercover superheroes, while trying to live the quiet suburban life, are forced into action to save the world. Stars Craig T. Nelson as Bob Parr / Mr. Incredible, Holly Hunter as Helen Parr, Elastigirl, Sam Jackson as Lucius Best, Frozone, and Jason Lee as Buddy Pine and Syndrome, whatever. Written by Brad Bird and directed by Brad Bird. And what is interesting about, I didn't mention like who played Violet and who played Dash, because those were kind of, I mentioned it later, but they're kind of like
Larry characters.
People would go, I don't know who Sarah Vowell is, or so and I think Wall-E, I probably got no
there's like three actual people talking in the whole thing.
Well, my wife, she was getting ready to go to work, and I was watching it earlier, not to jump to Wall-E real quick, but we will. She says, she goes, who is that? Is that John Goodman as the captain? And I'm like, no, it's Jeff Garland. And I go, the guy from the Goldbergs. And she's like, oh, yeah, okay. I'm like, yeah, exactly. And that's another show. The Goldbergs gets me choked up sometimes with their little moments of sentimentality.
Show. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like,
and
oh, my God.
Especially as soon as you don't have any kids.
No.
When you have kids, it puts it on a whole different level.
Yeah.
And I'm a babbling idiot a lot.
But that's also another thing where you probably want to tell the kids, like, oh, I had that game, or I had that toy, or look at that shirt he's wearing. That was,
I love that show because it's and that and Stranger Things, we watch Stranger Things, and I'm just like, I had that bike, and it was badass, and my kids are like, that's dumb.
Yeah. Well,
good bike. I'm like, shut your damn mouth, kid.
It's like when you think about it, like one of my podcasts coming up is going to be a gamers episode, and it's going to be Last Starfighter and Ready Player One. And Last Starfighter, to have a kid watch that now, it's like you said, the special effects aren't going to be as good, and they're just going to be like, I don't get it. And
but Ready Player One,
yeah,
I got a 10-year-old kid in there. He thought it was the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing also where that hits on both notes. Hits on the kids going, that's awesome, because they understand going into a game and playing. That's why Tron is kind of cool. And then but also on the other end, it hits you with, oh, look, there's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Oh, look, there's Chucky. Oh, look, there's Godzilla. Yeah.
Yep, it's awesome.
But okay, back to Incredibles. So I have, I just walked through the movie, and you can stop me at any time, but that opening interviews, I like how they're like, it seems, it's a cartoon, but the interviews are like, where he goes to get up and they're like, no, put the mic on and all this stuff. And it's, just quick cuts of this interview of him explaining who he is. And then right away it starts with the action police chase. And so he stops though to save the cat. And you're like, but the guys are getting away. And he's watching them drive around the park, and he shakes that cat out and then just throws the tree over and stops the car. And you're like, awesome. And I remember when I first saw this, it was so different, where before, another little story about me. So when I first saw Aladdin, the animated Aladdin, that was
the original,
like
the OG Aladdin.
that was the best I was like, this movie's so good, I love it. And then Beauty and the Beast came out, and then Lion King, or Lion King, Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast, and then
Lion King. And I was like, oh, I don't like this. This isn't Aladdin. It's not action packed. I don't like the songs as much, you know. Then I went to work for a place called Suncoast Motion Picture Company at Metro Center inside the mall, and they would sell movies, and we would, and so right about then, Aladdin came out, so we had to play Aladdin on a loop for 8-hour shift. You'd watch it 4 times. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm tired of this movie. And then we watched Beauty and the Beast over and over, and then Lion King came out, and we put Lion King on, and we're watching Lion King over and over. But then the more I watch those, the more I go, okay, these are good. These are some good stories. But it's that feeling I got when I first saw Aladdin of like, oh my God, this is like a real, like almost a bunch of action right away together. And that's how this was with, you know, it's like, oh my God, he just saved a cat and, you know, and stopped the bad guys. And
it's I love Incredibles as well. I mean, you said it was your favorite, and I immediately went, "Oh, well, maybe that's my favorite." You know, I don't know. I love all the Pixar movies, but I think it really touched home with me because it's a period piece.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't see that in an animated movie as much. You know, but it gave it kind of a level of cool
well
that
and
none of the other Pixar movies had up to that point.
And there's a thing in it with I've been trying to think of the word. I think it's practicality. It's the things that are real, that make real sense that they do in the movie, that you're like, oh my God, that's totally, like I talk about it later when they go in where the waterfall is and the waterfall opens, and it's the way they show you from up above how the waterfall, there's a thing built to split the waterfall, and you're like, oh my God, that makes sense. Like, yeah, that's,
that's why Pixar, they're the best storytellers.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
Because they can do anything. It's not going to cost them $30 million to film a small little chunk of that piece coming out and splitting the water. If it was live action, it would cost $1 billion to do that.
Yeah. But it's also goes back to Brad Bird going like, here's what I want, you know, with his emotion, with everything from like Iron Giant and this, you know, because he did Iron Giant, and then they got him to do this.
And he directed it?
And then, after this, he did that, the Mission Impossible where he's hanging from the Dubai building. He directed that one. But then when he's trying to help the boy Syndrome by pulling the bomb off of him, and, you know, he's just trying to help the boy and also being like, look, you're not my sidekick. And the kid has the bomb, you know, stuck to his shoe. And it says, and one of the facts here is Brad Bird liked how the actor was animated in evil in Dogma, Jason Lee. And so he thought he was right for the role. So he was watching Dogma and he was like, this guy'd be a good bad guy. So he made Jason Lee plays the devil in Dogma. He's the guy in the white suit. And it's like, oh, that's cool. And then when everything goes wrong, when they get sued, and then just normal life of the supers, like then they're just, you know, then he's working his job at the insurance company, and you're like, oh man, and he hates it. And then you got Wallace Shawn from from Princess Bride. He's playing his boss. You know, and he's been in Toy Story. I forget what he is in Toy Story. I think he's the little dinosaur. Yeah. Same guy, Wallace Shawn. But then when he's having dinner with the family and he's just like miserable, like he hates that he's not doing what he used to do, and she's just like, "Are you with us? Like you're not here. Like he's so somewhere else." And I put here that the practicality is always cool. Like he can't put out the fire with ice because it evaporates too quick. When him and Frozone go to fight the crime, and he's like, put out the fire, aren't you an ice guy? And he's like, but I don't have enough water around me to make, and you're like, that totally makes sense. Like, I get it. Like,
and like the best line from the whole movie, he's like, what's the matter with you? Did you run out of muscle?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just, And then, when he has to get that little bit of water, he's like, I'm just getting some water. And then it's like, awesome. And then they got that guy, he's fired the bullet and he's frozen the cop. And then when it goes to like this is another like cool, practical, whatever you want to call it. I just remember being like, that's so awesome. The message from the woman from the iPad thing, like how he opens it up and he's like, what's this? And then it goes, identity confirmed. And then he drops it and it scans the whole room to make sure nobody else is around. And then it tells him a message. And I'm like, oh my God, that was so cool. Like, that's just,
and
the best.
And the little things in that movie that they didn't have to do.
Yeah. That's what,
it's a kid's movie.
Yeah.
The kids didn't look at that and go, why did, it's amazing that they put that in.
Yeah.
That's what's so good about these Pixar movies is they're not just making a kids movie.
They know that adults have to take their kids to see it, so they're like, here, we're gonna do this with you. Oh, so good. And then the robot that he is told to destroy grabs him after his back went out, and he's trying to pull him apart, and his back like snaps into place, and then he like destroys it because he's like, and then he's like, oh, and his eyes like light up like, okay, now I'm better. And I love that. It's just so cool. And then him like going inside and hiding by it, and it's destroying itself, and it's like, so awesome. And then I put here, Edna, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say it's amazing that the animators have figured out in these movies how well to act with the characters. Like you just said, he's his back's out and the monster.
Yeah, little things.
Got him,
yeah,
and you see it in his eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we get to Wall-E, there's a lot of things in there that are amazing too, but which ties them all together. But it's just. The animators have figured out how to act with these animated characters.
And in the writing of like, here's the problem with this character, that he's old and he's got to, like him trying to get in through the tube when they're getting ready to send him, and he's like, and the guy keeps pushing a button, and then finally it goes through,
And he looks
because
over
of his belly.
Like,
yeah.
Screw you.
He's like, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Speaking of that, for Halloween, I was going to put on my Spider-Man outfit again, and that I wore like 2 or 3 years ago. And I went to put on, my belly sticks out, and I'm like, I look like that fat Thor. It's like fat
that's
Spider-Man.
The thing is, now you're one of the Spider-Men from the Spider-Verse.
From the Spider-Verse. Yeah, exactly.
Because I thought about it the other day, because we always go to an adult Halloween costume party, and I'm like, thank God for Endgame.
Yeah.
Because now I can be Thor every year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, it works.
Yeah.
No, that's where I talked about on one of my shows. It might be too young for you, but in 1981 they came out with Zorro the Gay Blade. It was a George Hamilton Zorro movie.
That was the year I was born, bud.
And it was as my wife was born the same year. She was born May 15th. And so I wanted to be Zorro, and it was a whole thing for which I guess I'll tell because it's kind of a Halloween episode. Although it's weeks after Halloween, whatever. That I wanted to be, but I'll tell you, even though you've heard it too. But for those of you who are new to the show and haven't heard it, I wanted to dress up like Zorro the Gay Blade from the movie because he was a hero. He was awesome. It was funny. It was great. And so I had the sword, and I had the black pants, and I couldn't get a black shirt. And my mom bought me a cape, but she bought me like a Dracula cape that's red on the inside. And I was like, no, I wanted like a Zorro cape. And then we didn't have a hat, but my dad had a hat from my uncle that the horse used to wear. So it was this big giant hat that I would that my dad's like, wear this, it's a black hat. And we go to my friends down the way, and I'm like, but Mom, I need a black shirt. She's like, maybe our friends up on the corner, maybe they have a black shirt because we're going with them for Halloween. And then you can be Zorro. And I'm like, but this ain't the right hat. Like, I need a Spanish, Mexican, whatever they're called, hat. And she's like, well, so we went over there, and my friend's mom said, well, hang on, you got the black pants. Hang on, I got a white shirt. She gave me a white button-up shirt. She said, here, we just bought these. They're these fake teeth. Let me put some blood on your mouth. And she slicked my hair back, and she goes, there, and get rid of the sword, and now you're Dracula. And I'm like, and I was so pissed. Like, my wife goes, I don't remember Halloween's. Like, she goes, I don't remember any of my costumes as a kid. She goes, like, you remember that one? I go, that's because I was pissed that I wasn't Zorro. I'm like, I don't want to be fucking, Dracula. Yeah. So I think when I turn 50 in 2 years, then I'll go for 2 more Halloweens on the second Halloween from now. Then I'll dress as Zorro. So. But do you need me to pause the show?
If you don't mind.
Okay, no problem. Hang on. Let me pause it. Beep. Unpause. Oh, look at that. I just unpause and it goes right back to, there we are. We're back without no hesitation. Pretty cool.
Dad life.
Exactly. Well, that's like when I was doing the show with Jason, and Jason, I would see him look off camera and he'd be like, no, and he'd be pointing his watch. He'd be like, a little more. And I was like, I felt real bad. I'm like, oh my God, I'm keeping him like too long. Like, I really need to and I'm like, because he said, your show for G.I. Joe, he goes, it was 3 hours of me and you talking. Sure. And he said, I had to drop it down to like an hour or whatever. He's like, It was a bunch of stuff that I had to cut out. Same thing with when we did Batman. I was like, hey, where's the stuff where I talk about this? He's like, no, I had to cut this out. I was like, oh, okay.
Well, and that's what I told you earlier. This could be your longest episode because I could talk about this stuff all night long.
Yeah, exactly. But then, so I put Edna is so great. And a fact about that is Brad Bird, the director himself, played Edna. And
really?
And this is something where, again, him, the writer, where he decided like Edna Mode was made half German and half Japanese after he thought about German engineering and Japanese car and camera manufacturing. So he's like, that makes her a better designer because she's German and Japanese. Like, that's why she makes the best outfits.
But that's a dude doing that voice?
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I thought I knew who that was. I thought it was that. You remember, and you're a movie guy, so you'll know. Mm-hmm. But Kindergarten Cop.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that girl. She's in that, she's in the NCIS in Los Angeles. She's on that show where she's like their boss or something. But anyway,
the principal.
Right? Yeah, the little girl, the little lady. Yeah.
I thought that's who that was the whole time.
Yeah,
Now I find out it's the director.
Yeah, because it looks like her, and I remember thinking like, is that her? And then it's like, no, because she has kind of the same voice, but
a little bit.
And then when she's talking about like no capes, why you don't give capes to anybody because they suck into the thing and all that. When he's like, okay, and then
spoiler alert. That point is proven at the end.
Exactly. And then landing under the water at the island is so cool. Like, it's coming toward the cliff, and then it just drops down under the water, and then you see it open, and he goes on in. And another practical where you're like, that makes sense. Like, I get it. Like,
and they didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
But they did it because it just made it all.
It just added to the world. Yeah. And like I said, that waterfall opening was cool and practical. And then him going to room A113. I don't know if you read this fact.
I've got that written in my notes, my friend.
Yeah.
So we're on the same wavelength. Go ahead.
The A113 is a classroom number at the California Institute of Arts where Bird and several others in the animation industry learned about graphic design and character animation. Bird was the first person to purposefully drop it in an A113 reference when he did so on the 1987 TV show Amazing Stories. And it has since been in every episode of The Simpsons that Bird worked on from 1989 to 1998, as well as every Pixar film. In The Incredibles, Mr. Incredible has a meeting in conference room A113, and he's later held on level A1, cell block 13 on the island.
Yep.
You know, when Elastigirl goes in there and she sees like 13's like way high. Yeah.
Yep. And the little funny fact about that is John Lasseter was in that class. Tim Burton. You know what I mean?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I didn't know Tim Burton was in there. Yeah, that's cool.
You know, any of the big name people that have been in animation, they were a part of that class.
That class, yeah.
And I think that's amazing that they.
Well, and if you notice when we get to Wall-E, the thing was A113 to not go back to Earth. Like it was like, oh, awesome. Yeah, it's those little Easter eggs that I love. That, like you said, like. I tell my wife, she's like, I don't care. I just watch a movie. And I'm like, but that's a little fun fact.
Yeah.
And then when Syndrome captures him and he's like, you caught me monologuing. like, and then when he when he goes into the water and he drops that bomb in the water, and he thinks Mr. Incredible's like dead, and then Mr. Incredible's just hiding out, and so good. And then him like seeing what Laserbeak was writing out, and then him he sneaks into the facility, like all that is really cool, like where those two guys are like watching, the thing comes up, it's broken, and they're like, what? And all of a sudden you see the moon get blocked out by this big thing that he threw at him, like part of the pod, and so good.
Yeah.
And that was those things where you're just, as me watching it for the first time, you're just like, oh my God, this is so awesome. Like, oh my God, this is so great. And then my favorite moment is when he hacks into the computer and he's finding out all the dirt about them and what they have planned. And Elastigirl pushes the button right then. And it's one of those cool movie moments that you just love. Elastigirl pushes a button to find out where he is, and it beeps on his end. And all the lights come on and guns come out of the wall. And they shoot all the balls at him. And the balls are sticky, and then they start to inflate as they attach to him. And the editing is real quick as he's trying to run to get to the door. And it's just overtaking him, and it's just like real quick cuts of like, so good. And I just remember watching that where it was one of those practical things again where, you make these balls that inflate. Like if you're trying to defeat Superman or somebody like that, you do that, and now they can't move because they got all these balls surrounding them.
Well, and it's funny because you bring up the quick cuts when he's running away and trying to figure out, if you were doing that live action, you would have to make those cuts.
Yeah.
And they didn't have to do that, but that's what made that movie feel different.
Well, and that part felt like you were panicked as well, just like he was. You're like,
It's just the way they make them.
Yeah.
And especially this one. This one's different than most of the Pixar's.
Yeah.
But it seems like they thought about, well, if we had to do this live action, how would we do it?
Yeah.
Let's do that in animation.
And regular thing. Like sometimes, like I remember a long time ago, there was a show called Animaniacs and Tiny Toons. And Spielberg did those. And Spielberg said, why I like doing animation is because you can do whatever you want. You can have Wile E. Coyote float in the air for a little bit before he realizes there's no ground under him, and then he falls.
The only time they fall is when they look down.
Yeah, exactly. and that's the thing with these. Like, you make it like, okay, these are humans that are in these problems. And they said this was the first Pixar movie that had all animated adults. It wasn't like Toy Story, like, toys. It was like all adults. And it was really cool. And now Elastigirl is on her way to find out what's going on. And Mr. Incredible's now the prisoner. And Dash and Violet have stowed away on Elastigirl's plane. And a fun fact about this is where I said nobody knows these names, but this was interesting. The noted author Sarah Vowell was talking about her father on the fateful day Bird was listening to the NPR show in his car and realized she had the perfect voice to play Mr. Incredible and Elastigirl's daughter. So he was just like, I'm going to put her in. And she does. She's like, I love her voice. Like, I don't know. It's just great. I love all of them, but.
Yeah.
And speaking of the Pixar, I haven't watched as many. The last newest one that I watched was probably Inside Out. So I haven't watched Moana. I haven't watched that one with the little boy Coco. And is that the only two? Anyway.
Oh no! There's Toy Story 4.
Oh yeah, I saw Toy Story 4. Yeah.
Okay.
Jason actually he's like, I got a digital code here, and I'm like, you don't use the codes? Yeah, I'll take it. So now I got Toy Story 4, which I saw in the theater, but now I own it. And then another cool badass part. This part is probably my all-time favorite of the whole thing.
No, wait a minute. Okay, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay. Too late. You already did, you son of a bitch. Go ahead.
Have you seen Incredibles 2?
Yes. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes, okay.
Sorry.
So I've seen I know. I said I haven't seen anything, and then you wanted me to go, there's an Incredibles 2? Wait a minute.
Yeah. Well, I
Pause
was just
the
like,
show.
Whoa.
No, I've seen it. No, it was really good. I really liked it. I think I still like the first one the best just because it was so unique and so cool, but I love how she was a hero in this one and the motorcycle scene and all that. So the best part of this whole movie, another cool baddest part, is when Elastigirl is trying to evade the missiles, and she asks Violet to put a force field around the plane. And Violet keeps trying, but she can't. And Elastigirl girl quickly runs over, makes a ball around the kids right before it explodes, and then they are all falling, and she makes a parachute for them. And a fun fact about this little thing is Holly Hunter insisted of learning real military flight language. Like, she wanted to know what all that meant and everything. But that was so cool where you're, because again, just like the scene with the inflatable balls where you're just like, you know, oh my God, like, you know, it's every movie is that way where you're just concerned and you're like, holy shit. And it works.
Well, and that just that they take the time, it makes a better movie.
If they were just evaded the missiles or whatever, but that also adds to then later, which I'll get at, of her trying to apologize to her mother, you know, and she's like, I couldn't do it. And her mom's like, no, I shouldn't have done that, you know, and I'm not a father, but I know that if you're going to be freaking out, flying the plane, trying to save your family, and you're going to yell at them about that, but then later you would go, no, I was wrong. I shouldn't have had you hurry up and get in the car and go drive for help because you can't drive, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Mr. Incredible and Syndrome think that his family is dead. And and I love the part, another cool part, just because I love it, because it just cuts to Elastigirl makes herself as a boat, and Dash is running his legs, and Violet's just riding inside, and you're like, oh, that makes sense again, like, awesome. And Dash has a big smile on his face because he can run as fast as he can, like he's always wanted to do this. And a real cool part when Elastigirl is telling them how important it is to not let their identity be known, and that if there's any trouble for Dash to run as fast as he can, he says, as fast as I can? She says, as fast as you can. Then Violet apologizes for not being able to make a force field, and she tells her that she shouldn't have asked her to do that, but that she is very powerful, more powerful than she knows. And you're like, awesome. So, and then, I'm sorry, I'm not zipping through this. I'm just, when you have something to say, then you jump in, which is fine.
You're fine.
Okay. Now Elastigirl's inside, and that was pretty cool where it stretches her and then her ass is sticking out. And when she first sees herself in that and she looks at her ass and is like, oh.
and when she's, you know, because her arm's all stretched out.
Yeah.
And the one guy, she like feels his chest.
Yeah.
Feels his chin and finds his head and then punches him in the face.
Yeah. And kicks the other guy. And then, oh, so cool. And then she finds out where Bob is. That's where, like we said, that energy's way high where they're trying to hold him. And the kids ran out of the cave because of the missile launch. Now they're, now they're outside in the woods, and the bad guys find out, and the alarm goes off. Remember, he's like, look at that bird. And the bird's like, wah, wah, and he's like, oh, shit.
Well, and what I thought was really cool, and it made it more just as much of an adult film as a kid film, was when she finds him, she's still pissed off.
Yeah.
Because she thinks he's having an affair.
Yeah.
You know, and he's just like, shut up.
Yeah.
I'm just so happy you're alive because he thought they were dead, you know? And,
and
it's those little things.
And the way she finds him, you're like, oh, shit, because he's hugging that girl, like saying thank you. Yeah, and you're like, oh, my gosh.
Yeah, and, you know, she's just a hussy and you're an asshole.
Yeah.
And it just, the once again, it goes back to they figured out how to make the animation act, and then the voice actors do awesome.
Yeah.
It's
and
a combination of that
and the thing really, of just being real life of like, she's still pissed because he did it. It's not just like, hey, I'm here to save you, let's go, you know.
Yeah.
And
it's not, I'm glad you're alive. You're a cheater and you're an asshole, but it's just funny. It's real life. Cartoon, you know? Well,
and then while they're arguing, and then the bad girl informs them, like, the kids have set off the alarm in the forest, like, you know, and then they're like, oh, shit. And the bad guys have guns on Violet and Dash. This is another, I know I said that other one was my favorite. I really like this part when Violet says, remember what Mom said? He says, what? Well, not this part, the other part, but it'll be after this. But he says, what did Mom say? She said, she turns invisible and says, run, Dash. And he just runs. And now they're like, wait a minute, what's going on? And here's the part I was talking about. So very cool several parts. Okay. So Dash is being chased, and when he runs across the water, and then he looks down and he notices, and he kind of smiles and laughs and like takes off faster, and you're like, awesome. And when he stops running and he sinks in the water when the two guys are coming, and he just stops and sinks, and then they hit each other. That's cool. And here's the one that I was talking about that is really another one of my favorites. One of the bad guys is trying to find Violet, and right before he does, Dash runs by him several times and punches a guy and says, "Don't touch my sister." Then he gets punched back by the bad guy, and as he turns around, the bad guy's about to shoot, and Violet jumps in and makes a force field to protect her and her brother. He asks, "How are you doing that?" She says, "I don't know." He says, "Don't stop." And he just takes off running. And you're like, fucking awesome. And that I remember, and again, it's like a practical thing of like, oh, this force field is made and he can run and roll the force field. Mm-hmm. Like I may have just, if I was writing it, thought of it's a force field, but they're thinking of like, he can run and the force field moves, just so great. Such cool stuff. And now wouldn't
even think of.
Yeah, exactly. And now the whole family meets up and they take out some bad guys. Then as they are almost surrounded, they are standing as a team and a family. So fucking odd. When they're all just waiting there. Mm-hmm. Oh, so cool. And you're like, yes. And then they first moment
when they all assemble and it's the Incredibles.
Yeah.
It's dramatic.
Yeah.
It's good.
And then they defeat some bad guys together, but then Syndrome captures them with his anti-gravity beam. And Syndrome explains how he's going to be the hero by stopping what he created, these big robots. Mm-hmm. And Violet helps the family escape. I like when the father's talking, and Dash is trying to go, Dad. And she's like, your father's talking right now. And she knows what's going on. She sees Violet rolling over there, and she's like, okay. And then they work on how to get to New York. And meanwhile, Frozone is looking for his super suit because he opens the thing. He's like, where is it? She's like, what are you talking? I thought we were going out tonight.
It's for the greater good, woman. I am the greatest good you will ever have. I love
so that. Good.
Once again, it's something they didn't need to put in.
Yeah,
made it such a better movie.
Yeah, it just makes the relationship of their families, like all that stuff. And Syndrome has now arrived and is fighting the robot, but something goes wrong and his plan goes a little sideways when the robot actually really attacks him.
It learns the remote on his arm.
Yeah, and that's what I like. I forgot to say in the forest when Mr. Incredible he's going to jump over him, and the robot goes and realizes where to hit him right here because he's going to be at that trajectory at this time because it's a learning robot. Another one of my favorite scenes is when you see an aircraft like the one that brought the robot, and it slowly kind of pans up, the camera moves up and you see the RV in the middle and she's holding it. Oh, it's so cool. And she's like, he's like, how you doing? She's like,
do I have to answer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they detach and now they're driving, looking for the robot. And then they argue about which way to go, what street to go, like a man and woman would. Hey, to go this way. And Mr. Incredible explains that he will take care of the robot. Elastigirl thinks it is because he is trying to be the man, but he says that he isn't strong enough and can't lose her again. And she kisses him, and they decide to work together. And that was cool, where she's thinking like, I'm going to be the man, you kids, everybody wait here. And it's like, no, I'm saying if you guys get injured while I'm doing this, if I die, it's okay. But if you guys die, it would tear me up. Yeah. Oh, so good. And then the big fight scene at the end. And very cool moment of Syndrome holding the baby. Like the way that was filmed, like with the glowing of the red of his boots or his whatever. And it's just him in a dark house, but his face is illuminated and he's holding the baby and he kind of turns around and you're like, oh shit. And he just stops the Incredibles in their tracks, and then the baby changes and then he gets sucked in because of his cape, like you said. Mm-hmm. And then the Underminer comes up and you're like, oh shit. And then that's the end of the movie and you got to wait 14 years or 14 years for a sequel.
Yeah. And that's the beginning of the next movie.
Yeah. And a final fun thing for this movie is there's a DVD extra that I watched of a fake 1960s cartoon pilot entitled The Adventures of Mr. Incredible. And the film's backstory, which is presumably in canon, was that Bob Parr allowed a studio to use his likeness for a Saturday morning cartoon before the superheroes were forced underground. And Mr. Incredible and Frozone were watching the unaired pilot for the first time. And Mr. Incredible and Frozone provide an in-character commentary. So while they're watching it, you hear their voices going like, is that you? Is that supposed to be me? Is that you? And it's like, who drew that? Like, what? I look white. I'm not black. Like, what's going on? Oh, it's so good.
I've got the DVD and all the bonus features, so I'm gonna have to look that up.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a fun thing. And now we're on to Wall-E from 2008. The plot is, in the distant future, a small waste-collecting robot inadvertently embarks on a space journey that will ultimately decide the fate of mankind. Stars Ben Burt as Wall-E, who's from Star Wars fame, Alyssa Knight as Eve, Jeff Garlin as Captain, and Fred Willard as Shelby Forthright. And it's written by Andrew Stanton and Peter Docter. They did the story, and Andrew Stanton and Jim Reardon did the screenplay. And it's directed by Andrew Stanton. And you were talking about like movies, like we were talking about movies and the cutting of The Incredibles, of that one scene. This opening is great, and the little fact of that is a legendary cinematographer helped stretch Wall-E to new technical heights. Cinematographer Roger Deakins, who I believe worked on like Big Lebowski and stuff, who has been nominated for a whopping 12 Oscars, served as a visual consultant on Wall-E, helping the animators figure out how to make the movie look like it was filmed with actual cameras. Very often animated films feel like they're recorded in some kind of computer space. Producer Jim Morris noted, "We wanted the film to feel like cinematographers with real cameras had gone to these places and filmed what we were seeing. We wanted to have artifacts of photography and to seem real and much more gritty than animated films tend to be." Which, that whole thing of like showing the whole world, like showing the geography of it and everything, and you're just like, okay, I get it. And I put here, he is so cute, and everything has stopped working except Wall-E. Like, he's still cleaning up, and everybody else has given up, and all the other robots are gone. And we'll get to it in a minute, but the fact the director came up with Wall-E's look at a baseball game. Stanton got the inspiration for Wall-E's design when someone handed him a pair of binoculars at a baseball game. He said, "I missed the entire inning," he recalled. "I just turned the thing around and I started staring at it, and I started making it go sad, then happy, and then mad, and then sad. And I remember doing that as a kid with my dad's binoculars, and I said, it's all there." So that was cool, where it's just like him with some binoculars, and he's like, oh, yeah.
And that's something, because I told you earlier that, I sat down today and I rewatched both of these movies earlier today, and I was watching Wall-E because I did that one first, and that's something that I wrote down in my notes. Is it's just the emotion that they were able to portray, from a little trash robot that doesn't even have a face,
and doesn't say any words, but until even in that beginning of him. That little roach, like he runs over that roach accidentally, and the movie has just started, and he goes, and then you're like, and then the roach like pops up and he's okay, and you're like, oh my God. But it's those just little things, and him watching Hello Dolly.
Yep.
Like, and I put here that I've never seen Hello Dolly, but there is a family connection to Hello Dolly. Thomas Newman, who composed Wall-E's score, is a nephew of composer Lionel Newman, who just so happens to have co-scored Hello Dolly, which appears prominently in Wall-E, as it's Wall-E's favorite movie.
Well, and that's was my very first note from this movie is the music in the whole thing. Is amazing. It drives that story so well, and it's just being the backdrop the whole time. It's I don't understand how it didn't win, an Oscar for just the music, and maybe it did. I don't know.
No, that's where it's just, even Hello Dolly, like, maybe they chose that because of Thomas Newman, but choosing the Hello Dolly song and choosing somebody holding hands, like that one movie, like that just makes it all just work. It's like we said,
drives the entire story. And you brought up the the A113.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of the guys that came out of that class of
Yeah.
they also ended up at Pixar, which was, you know, bought by Disney and all those things. But the funny part is a lot of the guys from them were Apple guys too.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that.
A lot of Apple references in Wall-E.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
when
The charging.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what you hear when a Mac comes on.
Yeah.
And then the movie Hello Dolly was playing on an original.
Oh yeah, on an iPod. Yeah, like 80 gig. Yeah, yeah.
You know, and I just think that's cool that they bring in little things that, you know, we remember because it's happening right now.
Yeah. Well,
in the past.
Well, and what's interesting to me is this by and large group.
Mm-hmm.
If you dived into it now, it could be like Disney. They bought Fox, they bought, you know, and they're just becoming this conglomerate monster that's all of a sudden going to run, you know, they bought Hulu, like they're going to run the world, and we're just going to go, oh, I guess we got to watch this, you know. But, you know, it's him, what I have here to him seeing Eve for the first time. And he's been by himself for so long that he's just like following her, and she keeps blowing shit up, and he's like, and he's hiding. And then when he makes her that little person, and she just looks at it and then keeps going, and he's kind of sad that she didn't like really appreciate it. But did you find in your facts that one of her arms, one of that little thing's arms that he made was the little Pixar lamp?
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
that's pretty
wow.
cool. Yeah.
That's what I love about Pixar is the Easter eggs.
Yeah, yeah.
They tie every film together, and it's great.
Yeah. No, it's and then there's like the pizza. I'll get to that later. The pizza truck, all this stuff show up. They finally officially meet, and it's very cute. Where then he shows her all of his stuff that he's collected when he takes her in there.
Yeah, and you were saying when he was like following her around and making her all that stuff, and he was the scene where the shopping carts get and he's like running away from when he gets pinned between the door.
Yeah,
that's my favorite scene in the whole damn movie.
Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah, no, it's where he's just trying to be quiet, and then all of a sudden, he backs up and hits them, and they all come down. Oh, so good. And then he shows her Hello Dolly, and her and another thing, like we said, of course it's in the script, like we're talking about how great this is, but it's also the movie, the storytelling, the movie, just everything that they've added. The thing of, like, first of all, the flame on that lighter looks so good as animated. Like, I don't know how long that took to make, but it looks really good. And of just her looking at the fire and him looking at her and falling in love. Like, we've all had that where you just kind of watch your wife or your girlfriend or whatever, and with you it's wife and girlfriend, and and you just appreciate them loving something, you know.
Well, and he doesn't have eyes.
Yeah.
He's got two camera lenses.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And they were able to the look in his eyes, you can see it.
Yeah.
It's not even eyes.
Yeah. It just conveys it right there, like, you know, and then him bringing the lighter with him, like, to be like, remember this? Like, oh, so good. And it's so sad when she grabs a plant. Okay, we had to take a bathroom break for a second because we were going, you know, when an hour and 22 minutes plus whatever we were talking before, then, you know, you got to go pee. It happens. Shit happens.
And you're drinking real beer.
That's right. Yeah, I wish I had my beer. But let's see, where was I at? So sad when he grabs a plant and she puts it in her. She grabs a plant and she puts it in her, and then she goes into hibernation, and he just waits like that whole.
He's like trying everything to try to get her to come back, and everything he knows. Which now I love the part where he gets his battery and he opens his little thing and he gets the jumper cables and put them on him. He tries to put them on her, and it blows him halfway across.
Yeah. Well, and then him with he's got like several umbrellas there. He opens that umbrella, he gets electrocuted, and he grabs the other one, gets electrocuted. Yeah. Oh, so good. And just waiting there in the rain with her and trying to show her, playing games with her, playing Pong, and she just not playing. Oh, so good. And then the ship shows up to pick her up, and he stows away on the ship so he can go with her.
Mm-hmm.
And then they board the Axiom, and that cleaning robot cracks me up. He's so cute. And I think I remember when I first got Wall-E on Blu-ray, like it's got a whole thing of like a separate little short movie of him or something.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's so good.
It shows how he ends up outside when they're dancing.
Yeah.
Outside, it shows that's where that short ends, is when he gets locked
out. Yeah,
out.
That's right. Yeah. And then you see all the lazy people that are in all their hover chairs with their faces in the screens, and it makes you go. And back then when you saw it, you were like, "Oh my gosh!" But now it's even more prevalent today than it was back then. Yeah, it's like holy shit. And that's where, like, you and I talked, we didn't talk on air, but it was like the thing of our Apples will tell us, like, here's how much screen time you used by having your phone on and just staring at it. And it's like, oh my gosh. And, it's like me, I'll sit there and go, I should read. I have this whole making of Once Upon a Time in the West, this old Western from 1968. And I'm like, or 69. And I'm like, oh, I should watch 68. Sorry. And I'm like, oh, I should read that book. But then every time I'm like, oh, I'm going to watch a movie, or oh, I'm on my phone or whatever. And it's like, no, I should sit down and read a book. Yeah. But it's a thing of when he first interrupts the guy that's been in all the movies, the guy from Cheers, John Ratzenberg. Mm-hmm. And when he knocks him off the chair, and then he's like, oh, what's going on? And he's kind of out of his trance. And he's like, oh, hey, little guy, what are you, Mm-hmm. And then same thing when he actually moves that woman's speakers and her screen disappears, and then she gets to see everything. And she's like, "There's a pool? I didn't know we had a pool." Yeah,
and they grew up. They were born on that ship.
Yeah,
because they've been there for like 700 years or whatever.
Yeah, it's like, oh my gosh. And then same thing with and then when her and that guy meet, when her and John Ratzenberg meet, they're like, hey, that's that little guy. Oh, that's Wall-E. Oh, Wall-E. He's like, hey, Wall-E. And all the captains get fatter through the years. Like you see the skinny one, and then it gets fatter and fatter. And when the captain is late, then he just resets a day. Because why didn't you tell me it's noon? Hang on. Yeah, and then it's like lunch, and then it goes, have breakfast. Yeah. And then right here, my wife, while I was taking my notes, she wrote, I love me, wife. So she leaned over and was like typing. I'm like, oh, you're cute. And then he's wanting the operations manual to read to him. He's like, read, operations manual.
Manuel.
Yeah. But he has to actually read it. The little thing goes over and opens a book for him to show him, like, no, you need to turn the pages. And then you're thinking, like, and me, because I hadn't seen it for a while, when her chest opened up and there's no plant, I was going, where the fuck's the plant? So now I'm wondering where the plant is. Like, it was almost like my first time going, wait, where is the plant? And then they send her to the faulty droid section, and then they escape. And I love that part when he's watching through the opaque glass, not fully opaque, but you can see him, see the shadows. And it looks like they're taking her head off and pulling her arms off. And he's like, and the other robot's screaming or doing whatever. And so he thinks it's her, and oh, it's so good. And then he runs through the glass. Oh. And she wants to send him to Earth. So she's going to send him back. Mm-hmm. And then that company robot comes in and puts a plant in the escape pod and doesn't see Wall-E or Eve. Then the plant and Wall-E are sent off in the escape pod. And Wall-E tries to stop it. And you see the thing, like the inflatables are coming up, the parachutes, like all this stuff. And he just can't stop it. And then it's like going to self-destruct in 20 seconds. And he escapes and he sees Eve. And then they both are celebrating in space that he had the plant when he opened his chest, and he showed that he had the plant, and she was like, oh. And then they're dancing with the fire extinguisher like he had done on Earth before, and that's where he found that out.
I think that's amazing that they, it's a practical thing.
You
think if you're compressed gas, it would, it just makes that movie as far-fetched as it is, and none of it really happened, but they throw the little things in there. And even the way the stuff coming out of the thing is like, they've actually animated the foam, and it's coming apart and all that. Yeah. Frozen in space, and you see that in the animation. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But
awesome. And then here's where I put that human couple that Wall-E met earlier, sees them through the window and are actually now not attached to their hover chairs. Mm-hmm. And they're just like watching and like, this is cool. It's that beautiful dance that they're doing. And all during this, the captain is learning all about Earth. And he's, it's like, here's what a hoedown is. And just telling him what a hoedown is and all this stuff. And he's just like, oh my gosh.
Well, and at the same time, they're outside of the ship doing their, flying through space. And at the same time, the captain's learning what dance is.
Yeah.
And the computer's defining dance.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It goes, Matt. Yeah.
That's like cinematography at its best.
Yeah.
Back and forth, and
the juxtaposition of it. Yeah.
I mean, all the terminology.
Yeah. No. Well, right. No, it's perfect. It's those things that just work when, it's like, it made me think of the zombie thing that I brought up on my last show. But what I love is that part when he's like, so your plan is to build these fucking buses, take them over here, kill all these zombies. You're going to drive across 2,000 zombies. You're going to make it all the way to the deck to drive a boat to an island that may, not have any food on it. And they're like, yeah, that's a plan. He's like, oh, okay, let's go. And it's that thing of like, you've had people kind of to go with what we're saying. You've had people go, well, here's the plan. And then it goes right in while they're talking, they're doing the stuff, and it cuts back and forth to them, and it's good.
It's explaining something without explaining something.
Yeah, and then Eve also sees the video of Wall-E watching her and taking care of her. Like when it shows like her in the, like it shows from her point of view with it getting him getting electrocuted and all that. And then A113 is a directive to not go to Earth. Mm-hmm. And the captain wants to go back. I don't want to survive. I want to live. Like they're like, no, if you stay here, you can survive. And he's like, no, but I want to go live. And like what I've just been told, it's like a powerful thing of like learning about Earth. There was a scene in Fifth Element where, I don't know if you've seen that. You probably did. Where Lilo is watching, I think it's Lilo. Now I'm thinking Lilo and Stitch, but I think her name's Lilo, whatever. Bada boom. And she's on the internet learning about like the history of Earth, and it's all this war footage, and she's like almost crying, like just, it's so devastating to her. Like, I'm trying to bring love, and I'm all about love, and this is like destruction. And it's that thing of like, no, I want to live. Like, I'll go to this planet, and whether we die or not, at least we tried, So good.
Yeah.
And Wall-E being electrocuted, and she doesn't like it, then she gets turned off when that little droid goes over and pushes a button to turn her off. Or is that the big... Anyway.
It's co-pilot.
The autopilot, yeah. And turns her off, and now she is going to be launched out of the airlock. And the little cleaner droid gets stuck in the door of the airlock, and then Eve saves them both. Like, oh, so cool.
Well, and then, in that same scene, they're like in the trash.
Yeah.
Of Axiom.
Yeah.
And there's giant Wall-Es, and I can't remember.
Yeah, they were. I think Wall A. I think were the big ones. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just little things that they did that just all made it make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like all the little lines of that one robot when he decides to not follow the line, the little cleaner robot, and he jumps out. And then he's like, oh, nothing happened. The line just moved over to me. Like, okay.
For him to like blow up or something. And
yeah. But, and then Wall-E is dying and he needs a new motherboard. and Eve realizes that they need to get back to Earth because she does, she's trying all those motherboards and none of them work. And
that's when he gets the lighter out.
Yeah.
And that makes her realize that, oh, wait, we just have to finish the mission.
Yeah, yeah. And then the captain tells Eve where to go to put the plant when he gets on the thing. And he's like, her. And first, you're laughing because you're like, I think he thinks he's directly talking to her, like in a little thing, but he's all over the ship. Yeah. And then he's like, but they're going to cut me off at any. And then they cut him off. And it's like, oh, so cool. And then she's like, all right. And Wally stops the thing from going down. And the captain stands up on his own 2 feet at the same time. And he turns off the autopilot. And that's cool where Wally's trying to stop that thing. And he's just being crushed as he's going. And you're just like, oh, my God. Like, he's got such heart. And then they put the plant in the machine. And they jump to hyperdrive to Earth. And Wally seems dead. And they land on Earth. And the doors open. Everyone is walking. Eve takes Wally to his place to find parts to help him. Then she shoots a hole through the ceiling. That's so cool. And we wait, and Wally is fully charged and better, but she is reset. But he is reset to factory. And she gives him a kiss, and his hand won't let go. Then he is back. They plant the plant, and all is good. And a final fact, and then we'll get to the ending because it was very powerful. I didn't mean to just jump all over it.
You're fine.
But the final fact is it's a Pixar movie, so there are a lot of Easter eggs. Among them, Ham the Pig and Rex the Dinosaur from Toy Story, plus Mike Wazowski from Monsters Incorporated can be seen in Wally's truck near the beginning. In the beginning of the film. Skinner's scooter from Ratatouille and the Pizza Planet truck are rusting in one of Earth's many trash heaps. A reference to A113, a class of CalArts where many Pixar animators studied, can be found in every Pixar movie, and Wall-E gave it what Stanton called its most obvious placement, is the name of the directive that states humans can never go back to Earth. And when Wall-E creates a statue of Eve, the lamp he uses for her arm is none other than the star of Oscar-winning Pixar short Luxo Jr. And yeah, that part when, well, first of all, about him charging, like when he's going by the sun and he pulls out his solar panels and he charges right away because he's right there.
Yeah.
And then when she puts everything on him, and then she just, she's looking at him and like shoots up into and blows out the thing, and then he charges, and you're just like, oh, awesome. And then you're like, he's better now. And then he just leaves and goes and starts grabbing trash and building his little mountains. Yeah. And you're like, oh, fuck. But yeah, and then them holding hands and him not holding it back. And then finally he grabs hold of her, and then you see his eyes kind of flutter and blink, and then he gets it. And it's like, oh, awesome. So cool.
Yeah. It was, I don't know, out of any movie I've ever seen, because there was no dialogue in the first 3/4 of that movie.
Yeah.
There was no talking, but you knew exactly what was happening the whole time.
Yeah. And
that's what makes that movie my favorite Pixar movie, because all Pixar movies are good at telling a story. They suck you in, and they make you think, and, just like what we were talking earlier, a story about toys.
Yeah.
Make grown men turn into crying babies.
Yeah.
So they're all good at telling a story, but it's just like Castaway with Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
Just one guy in that movie.
Yeah.
And you love every second of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
This movie is the same, to where the first 3/4 of it, there's no talking.
Yeah.
And they're inanimate objects. They're machines.
But you're with his character of who he is. Like, you just love him right away, and everything that he runs into, all of his problems, you're rooting for this guy.
And if you just drill down into that and think about how hard that is to...
Well, it's to convey. It's like you said about, like, Pixar, like Up. That first thing of Up, explaining how he meets his wife, goes through life, this whole thing. They're supposed to go on an adventure. She's pregnant. She loses a baby, all the way through to her death. And all in, like, less than 5 minutes, maybe.
The first 3 minutes of that movie was a movie.
Yeah.
And it about made you cry.
Yeah, it conveys everything you need to know.
You
Yeah.
know, they're the best storytellers in Hollywood. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah. No, they're it's great stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's our show. But
Did
you want to
beat that dead horse?
Yeah. That's what you always say. I think that I was thinking you should have like a gun blast, but that might be too. But a gun blast of like, okay, that horse is dead.
Yep.
And
we beat it to death.
Yeah. No, I think we did good. We're only at an hour and 38 minutes, but I haven't even done my intro to yet, my monologue. But yeah.
It's enjoyable, man. I love the way you break them down and you give the little facts that, like, I've watched both of these movies numerous times, and I learned something about both of them tonight. So,
well, thank you. Yeah, when I first came up with the show, I was like, well, I'm going to talk about these. I'm going to tell facts that I find interesting, that other people might find interesting. If you're a movie guy, you're like, oh, wow, that's really cool. And what I've started doing, I used to go into IMDb and I would get the facts from there. Then you realize, like, no, those are like, it's like Wikipedia where anybody can just put a fact up there. So I'm like, no, I'm going to go back to, I'm going to go to like, these other websites are like, oh, we listened to the audio commentary and here's what we got out of it. And then I can be like, okay, here's some facts. So, but yeah, is there anything you want to say? Promote your show or whatever? I always hate to leave. I feel like I want to drag it on forever and do a 5-hour podcast, but
I could do this all night. But
I know
we're Why Daddy Drinks. We're just a little podcast. We're regular people. I've got kids, and sometimes I want to strangle them.
Yeah.
But other times, I love them all the time.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. Yeah. I'm just going to edit that part out, though. It'll just be so.
All good. I do. I love the hell out of my kids, but if you've got kids, you know that there are plenty of times in your life where you're kind of thinking, what have I got myself into?
Yeah.
That's what my podcast is all about.
Yeah.
It's all of the good things in life and the bad things in life that can drive you to drinking.
Yeah. Yeah. And dealing with kids and then your co-host, she doesn't have kids, but she's hilarious and she's got some crazy stories and
she's got plenty of shit to deal with.
Yeah.
Got her new dog and her new house and so we just have a lot of fun. We kind of bitch and moan about a lot of stuff, and hopefully it ends up being funny. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
So Why Daddy Drinks podcast on Instagram, and just check us out on everywhere podcasts live.
Yeah, Facebook, iTunes. Yeah, no, it's a good show. I don't have kids, but I enjoy listening to it because it's like your last one was about YouTube and all those things, and about what a time suck it is. And how the kids are watching people playing video games, and I'm the same way you and your friend are, where it's like, why just play the video game? Like, why? My cousin was trying that, and he'd play for 5 hours a night, trying to get listeners and views, and it was like, look, you're,
don't get me started, man, because
I know
we can do another 2.5 hours.
Exactly.
Nuts, But yeah, it is. It's you don't have to have kids. It's just the little things in life that either drive you nuts or sometimes we have an entire episode on what makes us happy.
Yeah.
So, just check us out, give us a try, and don't forget Popcorn Promises.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that guy that fuck you, Jason Bromley. Yeah, don't forget them. Yeah, Jay Burt.
We love Jay Burt, and if it wasn't for Jason, we would have never met. We would have never had this episode. So
yeah, exactly. No, same thing. Like I said, like there's the little things in life that I talked about on the last thing. Like I went over to Jason's house. Me and him and his wife just sit there and talked. And I was like, we're supposed to do a podcast, but you look like you're fading. And I'm like, I got up at 5 p.m., but you've been working since in the morning. So he's like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm like, that's fine. I had a good old time. So, it's good all the way around. So, I guess, do you have any dialogue from these movies that you want to end with? I know I put you on the spot, but what was that one that you said?
Well, it was. Oh, shut.
Now I forget what it was. Was it from The Incredibles?
It could have been The Incredibles. It could, but you're always talking about you're looking for a sign off,
right?
And you can't ever figure out. So you know what I figured I would do tonight is I would. Oh, I just hit my mic because I've been drinking too much. I figured I would lend you my sign off for the evening.
Okay.
Do you even know what mine is?
Yes, yours is if you should kill him. No, if you love him, please don't kill him. Something like that. Go ahead.
Just remember, you love him, so try not to kill him.
There you go. That'll work for me. It works for me, as Hunter used to say on the TV show in 1989. All right. Thank you, everyone, and I'll talk to you whenever, and Matt will talk to you whenever. If he's back on, which hopefully he will. Now I'm going to end the show, and he'll be like, fuck you, I'm not coming back.
No, I'll be back.
All right.
We'll see you guys all later.
All right. Bye.